All right, thank you. I'm a precinct chair, a state delegate, former candidate to the Utah House, and I appreciate the effort made to make adjustments to this current law. I've reached out to Senators Anderegg and Brammer and been reassured that SB195 would address my concern. But after reading the bill, it doesn't take any of my suggestions into account. I propose the exigent circumstance clauses be removed as they are vague and can be abused. I also propose we remove the automatic expiration of the emergency order. You might ask why? Because in a real emergency, a catastrophic one, this could hamper the state's ability to respond. However, I propose that a special legislative session is automatically called as a result of an emergency declaration. Also, the state of emergency should default to being terminated following this legislative session unless there is a resolution passed by a supermajority of the legislature. I ask you to consider if 2/3 of the legislature can't agree that there is an emergency, is there really an emergency? Also, I would like to add that we were lucky to have a governor that didn't make it worse, but nothing in law would have prevented him from turning Utah into California, right? So the legislature should be required to vote so those who they represent can hold them accountable. It shouldn't be optional. I also oppose the clause that allows religions to be treated differently. In the original bill, this was lines 571 through 580, specifically line 577. And finally, I appreciate that this bill reins in the unfettered powers of the Department of Health. I am concerned the local health departments will have too much power yet still.
All right,
thank you for your
time. We're going to go to Kristen Chevrier.
So I'm Kristen Chevrier. I represent thousands of Utahns who value the right to make their own health and business decisions. I appreciate all the work that's been done on this bill, and I'll just quickly address my concerns. These are just two of my concerns. I'm concerned about who will represent the public on the committee. I want to be represented by actual owners of small businesses and families and employees, the people who are boots on the ground, who are affected personally by the decisions made or the recommendations made by this committee, not by the Salt Lake Chamber. And second, I hear policymakers referring to the science, and I'm seeing these policymakers ignore and discredit some science and scientists in favor of other science and scientists. We need to be looking at all of the science and seriously considering it, because by its very nature, all science is theoretical and is never settled. So we should be having robust debate over every theory and practice, and not just picking and choosing experts that we're going to listen to. Those are just two of my concerns. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Mike Tyler. I'm coming from Taylorsville area. Appreciate the Senate and the staff here today. I want to address the fining of the businesses. This is an important aspect of this. We're seeing that $10,000 fines whittled down to $5,000, and then the $150 for individual. Those things need to be striked down.
Real quick, Senator Vickers, are you aware of anyone besides those gigantic parties with tens of thousands of people actually getting a $10,000 fine?
Yes, there have been some businesses throughout the state that have received those fines.
Okay, that is something I think is worth looking at.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is James Tracy. I'm actually from Senator Buxton's district. I appreciate the time. I just wanted to echo what George Beknesian said to strike out. Those were some of my concerns as well. I didn't see the updated amendments. My biggest concern was the lack of due process in the original bill. I saw that was there. So as the bill sits today, I'm in favor with these strikes to being taken into consideration.
Thank you for allowing me to testify this morning. My concern also is we need definition of what an emergency is. I have a personal situation where my brother-in-law died because he was in solitary confinement because this emergency went on and on and on. And he is one of many who died because they were prohibited from seeing their loved ones, which was the only thing that would have kept their mind in operation. And because of that, he died within a 3-month period of time in isolation in his room in a care center where he was projected 6 weeks before that to have lived for another 4 or 5 years. And so it's really important that we define really what an emergency consists of, and that there's a metric that is looking at an average of 5 years of information and making sure that we protect all of our citizens, not just those that get sick with a virus of any kind, but those that need to be with their families when they are in assisted living. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Gopi Krishna, and I just had one main concern. Just now, Senator Vickers mentioned that most of the powers given to the executive are given from the legislative side, but I wanted to point out that almost all the orders from the executive as well as the public health emergency orders had a lot of language from Utah Leads Together plan and the transmission index, neither of which the legislative branch had any control over, and came from the Gardner Institute and the Chamber of Commerce. And the attached to that is the point that the order, by definition, in the general government 63G, cannot apply to a large group of people. By making it a category called order of constraint, I'm afraid that you're legitimizing something that was not legal in the first place. So you can check the power by simply saying all actions of the health department and executive can be offset by the legislature, and that will do the job. So with that, I'll end my comment. Thank you.
Lastly, Mr. Boyack.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Connor Boyack, Libertas Institute. I've had a past couple interesting days on Facebook. I've been tagged in dozens of posts by people who are very passionately concerned about this bill, and have had to spend a lot of time trying to clarify misconceptions. There appear to be two main things that I've seen, Mr. Chair. You listed some of the objections and concerns that you've received. The primary one is that there's this concern that the definition of order of constraint is newly empowering public officials to enact restrictions. And this perception that that definitional language is new restrictions and opportunities for restrictions. Of course, that's not true. The existing law, which this bill amends and limits, allows broadly for orders and restrictions and controls to be imposed. And so those who might be concerned about the breadth and the nature of these orders should want this bill, because by defining what these types of orders can be, including stay-at-home orders and restrictions, the bill then restricts them and imposes the legislative oversight over them. The secondary and I think lesser concern I've seen, but it was articulated by Ms. Kimball today, is the allegation that this bill has no definition of what an emergency is. Well, right after that definition of order of constraint is an existing definition in the law about a public health emergency. It is broad. It is not data-based. There is no requirement of 5 years of data or, any specific data points. I think maybe that's necessary to be broad so that there is some discretion given to try and look at the particular facts of that particular health emergency. But there is an existing definition of emergency in law. Now, we would prefer to see maybe some of the parts of this bill go further, but this is a good bill. Very much appreciate the working group working on this. We've been in communication with groups across the country working on this as well. And what's in this bill is a number of good restrictions and requirements to make sure that the public can have a voice and have oversight over the process. So encourage your support of the bill and appreciate your time.
Thank you. So if I could summarize what you just said, this bill may not be perfect, but it is almost infinitely better than not passing the bill.
Took the words right out of my mouth, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. With that, we will close public comment. Seeing no lights, I will invite you to sum.
Yeah, and let me just quickly address I took some notes. A couple of things. Exigent circumstances is something that we had a lot of discussion about, but our attorneys assure us that that is a pretty tight definition. Demanding that we call ourselves into a special session. Actually, and we can't do that in a statute. We can't require the governor to call us into special session. Turning us into California, quite frankly, this sets it up so that we can't do that. The governor couldn't turn us into California. He doesn't have enough time or the ability to do that, so we have enough checks and balances. The religion piece, all it says simply is that you can't treat a religious organization like you can any different than you do any other businesses, so it's not treating them different. And I think that we've addressed the others, so thank you.